What's going on, everybody? Welcome back from a rather long break. I think it was like 2 weeks or so. We are back. We are not. Wow, they're starting off the show with a donation.
Thank you so much. Sweet.
Yeah, we took a little break. I started a new job, started school and things like that. So, sorry, comments are catching my eyes. Heard I might be debating Buddy Trap. I don't know. Maybe someone messaged me about doing a debate, but I told them kind of specifically what I'm saying now is that I've been very busy. I've been starting a job that's basically on China time, and then doing finishing up school. So that's been difficult for me. So potentially I might be doing one. I gotta work around my time. Cease knows it's been difficult for me to allocate time. So. But that should be changing now here going forward. But yeah, anyway, Cease, I'm going to stop rambling as always and kind of let you fill in what's going to go on tonight. Or yeah, I guess tonight it is. So that's just the weird part for me is I don't know if it's night or day because of this change. I'm like, is it nighttime or is it daytime?
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. First of all, it's really good to be back. Definitely feels like it's been a while. While you've been just trying to get used to your work schedule. I've been trying to finish my degree and also trying to enjoy the summer a little bit. But yeah, I'm glad that everybody is here with us tonight. And someone is asking, or everyone needs a smile is asking, what is an EA show? It's another YouTube show that I was on a couple of times. I used to be called the Empathetic Atheist Show. The host of the show has since converted to Islam, and I think they changed the name to Empathetic Alliance, I think it is.
I'm not sure. As you state that, by the way, I'm going to get out of OBS and just get back into the regular cam because it's draining my battery so fast, and I know that's going to be the cause. So go ahead and do that. I'll still be here audio wise.
Okay, sounds good. And a few months ago, I had a sort of a conversation on the show. My brother and I went to converse with 3 different Muslims. Yeah, we'll drop a link in the description. I think Mike, when he gets back, he can do it. I think he has a link. We're also going to be playing it on here. We don't know exactly, like, it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error thing because we don't know exactly when all the points are made. So and it's a pretty long thing, so we won't get to all of it tonight. We're going to break this in different parts.
Yeah, and we kind of want to hear your thoughts on, hopefully, because we don't do like 2-hour-long video breakdowns usually, and so we've wanted to break this down, but we're kind of curious going forward, like if this is just too much, then just let us know, and we'll keep it to clips, and then the main focus is going to actually, since we've been writing scripts and things like that, is going to shift a lot more into very specific arguments and even, like, I guess, we'll have kind of the lexicon, so to speak, playlist for philosophy for, quick kind of knowledge from that perspective, and then specific arguments and counter arguments. And so we'll start dividing things up that way a lot more. But on the live front, we're kind of curious on how you guys would prefer to see the content go, because we want to kind of cater that towards the people that support us. So just let us know on that. Keep that in mind as we do this episode, that we haven't really fleshed this out in terms of, I don't know exactly when the good discussion happens. I was actually doing a debate while you were doing this show. Right. So I'm very fuzzy on it. And I came in towards the end and we talked about logic. So my perspective is a little different on it from yours, as I'm probably a little more rusty. So I'm going to kind of ask a lot of questions to you or present things. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll just kind of
we asked that everyone listening be patient with us. We're just getting back in the swing of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully, this won't be too awful.
Stream, so we'll have to see how that works.
But no, the reason why I decided, because originally I wasn't even going to really bother to go over this, but I think what's driving me to want to do this is the fact that since that conversation, because we had agreed to have a part 2 of this conversation, or a multi-part of this conversation, both on this show, on their show, again on Justin's show. At least we had talked about it when we were there. And since then, it's mainly been radio silence. Like, they seemed, other than the fact they kept interrupting my brother and I when we were trying to make a point. Since then, since that conversation, they posted some stuff on social media saying things like, how they educated a physicist on science, saying things like, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, like very arrogant statements. And of course, I get killed in their comment section. On the video, I'm getting killed on the comment section of their video. Which again,
let me interrupt you. I mean, that is not even. It would be weird to, in my perspective, to be in a debate on Islam and not have the comments treat it like a WWE. It's like that in Islam so much that even with the and I'll say I don't have anything really like against obviously people went in these discussions at all, like them as people, on the EA show or any other Muslim. I mean, there's things that they do or not do, but they believe in that I have personal problems with, and if that leaks into their way that they conduct themselves, then I have those problems. But in terms of the conversations and stuff, I'm not looking at it from that perspective. That said, there's just this aspect in almost every conversation I've had, and I even called out kind of some of the people on the show in like Facebook groups that we're in and like philosophy groups where things will be titled like person gets destroyed or owned. And I'm like, we're all waiting for you to kind of grow up, because I remember like being an atheist and being like, yeah, the theist got destroyed. And that is just to me, a really like dumb way to go about this whole thing. I don't think the whole getting destroyed or like X or Y or Z tapped out, like using phrases like that, it's like the most clickbaity shit, and it just shows to me it's just like kind of disingenuous to like actually having these discussions to find truth. But geez, okay,
well, sweet.
Thank you so much. I don't, Canadian dollars seem better than US dollars, so
we should bring Ron on the show.
Maybe it's California dollars. Do they have different dollars? I don't know how that works. I'm just kidding.
Honestly, I don't even mind the kind of clickbaity titles, because I get it. People do that. That's not even so much what bothers me. And honestly, like watching them say what they say, or watching the comments of their minions on their channels, talk shit about me, doesn't bother me. I find it amusing. The only thing that bothers me about it is the fact that they are not willing to engage in the real conversations. In the conversation, they were interrupting every 2 seconds and not actually letting us answer or get a thought across. And I've seen this with multiple Muslim channels where they refuse to go on anybody else's shows ever. They'll set it up so there's like 4 of them or 5 of them, and usually 1 or 2. And like when we have theists on, usually we try really hard to give them their space to say what they want to say without interruption and respecting their time in that way. And usually it's one-on-one. Occasionally one of us will jump in and add something, but we're trying to make it fair.
We make sure before we go live that we talk with the theist or whoever it is we do this one-on-one, but if you prefer to have a conversation between the two of us, we can. And it's anytime we've done the two, I believe every time we've done the two, it has been I'd prefer to talk to you both. Not like let's talk to them. And it's always been on that end. But yeah, it's a point that I'd want to make. Wow. Thank you, people, for
thank you so much
for the donations. It helps a lot in terms of getting the StreamYard bills paid, man. So
and I'll say this. Obviously I don't know these people personally. I know that I don't have any problem with Justin and his conversion. I mean, obviously, I have a problem with what he believes in. I think what he was convinced by is ridiculous. But sure. I felt like, if anything, he was treated unfairly by a lot of atheists during his conversions. And I never defended any kind of abuse or online bullying of that kind. I've seen him since get very defensive in the way that he approaches some of these conversations. I would like to have him on and have a conversation with him. I haven't talked to him since that time that we were on there last.
Sure.
But I will say that this group, I think they're called, what is it? The Adventure, some Thoughts
Thought Adventure, something.
Thought Adventure, something. I do have a problem with them in the sense that it seems to me that their approach is incredibly dishonest. One thing I saw recently, and I'm pretty sure it's the same podcast, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but where they had a debate with Apostate Prophet, where afterwards they attacked him for not sticking to what they had agreed to discuss, which was general philosophy rather than particularly Islam. And then Apostate Prophet posted an email exchange where one of the topics was specifically Islam that they were going to talk about. So, of course, their followers eat it up. But on the outside, they were just incredibly dishonest about the way in which they interact with people. And, like one of them, what is it, Jake, Muslim metaphysician, whatever. He was, at one point, he showed up in one of the comment sections of another episode I was on another podcast as a guest, randomly talking shit about me. And it's like, well, why don't you come on and have the conversation? I'll go on your show as well. But we went on a Muslim show first. Come on our show. Let's have a conversation. Not that this kind of sneaky, cowardly little, it's
well, yeah. That was kind of where that's where I stopped taking the whole thing seriously. And like I said, we're gonna get on to the video here in a second. But like I said, it's like whenever I had offered that, like, hey, come on, it was like go on our friend James's Tired thing, and I was like, I mean, yeah, I guess we could do that, but. And you kind of stopped me, and not stopped me, but you were like, yeah, but that's I don't think it's fair. I went on there, and then you went on towards the end, and then why don't we return the favor? I was like, that's actually a good point, because
let's split it up. I don't mind going on any show, especially on a theist show. I'm perfectly fine with that. But let's break it evenly. Not that we're constantly giving you people content.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet you always refuse to step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Exactly.
And and the people talking shit in the comments, it's like, okay, well then how about you step up then? Like, then you email us and come on the show and let's you defend your arguments. It's just a lot of people are so used to shit talking behind the keyboard and hiding.
It's the same rhetoric that I've gotten. So I've gotten people personally in my life that have reached out to me, and someone that might hear this, if they listen to my stuff at all, that in my personal life, it's probably not towards you, because this has happened a lot of times, where it's like I've forgotten the amount, but I've had people either watch something like a debate or something I've done or someone I've responded to on a TikTok or something, and then they're like, you go for the low-hanging fruit. And then this is the same thing that we get on Talk Heathen or the Atheist Experience. People go, you guys only take dumb callers or something. It's like, where to find us.
Yeah.
The invite
we'll take whoever wants to come
onto the platform is always there. It's just not always going to be the case that I'm going to provide you the content if you're not willing to reciprocate, the offer. Yeah, and I don't know, mirroring things is, I guess, okay, but it's like, no, these conversations don't need to just happen one time. They should be a progression of different conversations, so you can, we need to get more people that we've had conversations back on. We've had a few we've had back on, right? We had Matt DeLockery, the New Testament, I believe he has a PhD in New Testament studies. He's come back on like 2 or 3 times, right? So it's like, and we've made more progress, I feel like, each time because of it. But anyway, I feel like we're going super long-winded on that. Hey, Jim, speaking of.
So the topic of this debate was the Kalam and whether or not the arguments of the Kalam make sense. And yeah, if you want to pull that up real quick, just as a quick refresher. Okay. Do you want to tell the audience what the Kalam is?
Oh, yeah, sure. So okay. Premise 1. I mean, do you want me to put it up on the screen? I think we actually have something here.
It's up to you.
I'm pretty sure most people are familiar. So premise 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, the universe had a cause, and then go on from there to God. So people are going to take P1 as their causal principle, and so I don't know if you guys. I don't really remember the exact content, so I don't know if you guys get into like causal principles or things like that.
We spend the whole time just trying to get past the first premise because they can't process what David is telling them. I mean, I want everybody listening here to keep in mind that here they are discussing with a physicist, trying to lecture him about what the science is saying. These are laymen. They're not, as far as I know, they don't have any degrees in philosophy. They're people who are reading stuff off of, just their self-taught. As far as I know, maybe I could be corrected there, but just watch this train wreck of a conversation.
The premises and tell us whether you agree with them. Obviously you don't, but yeah, maybe you could just give us your overview take on it.
Now, anybody that wants to go back, we have an episode where we kind of presented David the Kalam and went over that and stuff, and then but I mean, you'll probably get the same out of this, but if this interests you more, it's there.
You can go first.
Okay, so should we start with number 1?
Yep.
Yeah. Whatever begins has a cause of its beginning. Or whatever begins to exist has a cause of its beginning.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, no, I see. I'm thinking this is.
This is going to get confusing for me hearing you like ask people questions. Are you talking to me or is that you in the stream? All
different version. Okay. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Okay. This is about cause and effect, and I would say that cause and effect are not fundamental. So if you're interested in things that are the deepest understanding of what's out there, it's not going to be a conversation in terms of cause and effect. Okay, so over the last 120 years from science, we've seen evidence.
Do you think it'd be a fair way for me to categorize David's position in a slightly different way, to say that it's more of a like within confines of physical reality or like physical laws, things of that nature, as opposed to maybe it being like a metaphysical thesis? I know it's something that theoretical bullshit Scott Clifton has kind of presented for like, I don't know, like on a video like 9-10 years ago on his channel, and then he's since brought that up with Craig in their last conversation. But would you say that those 2 points in any way kind of bridge at all for what David's saying, or I'm kind of curious on what you think?
My understanding. Oh, can you still see me? I think my camera just died.
You're good. I can still hear you, so that's all that matters.
I don't know why it's being weird. My understanding, and it's I do struggle to some degree with this.
Spice is disconnected. Well, we'll continue on while we wait for Cease. I think he's got storms.
And then we can talk about what we mean by evidence. pointing towards cause and effect really being something that's more of a common sense kind of thing. And we normally say that it's an emergent kind of property, an emergent kind of relationship, but it's not fundamental. And we can go into those details. So that's my problem with that. There's an assumption there that's not compatible with what we've learned over the last century or so.
I'd ask you to elaborate on that if you can, David. I mean, just to learn from you.
So I'm actually, I want to give some major credit to Abdul for that follow-up, just to say, hey, elucidate on that, please. Allow me to actually.
That was weird.
Yeah, you're fine. So the point I'm making now, after David kind of had presented his point, I actually highly respect that Abdul's follow-up to actually, to ask him to elaborate on that, because some people might just be waiting for the next thing to say, that kind of thing, and so to me that's
but he does some of that later on. I don't know what just happened. My internet is fine. For some reason, my camera and microphone randomly disconnected for a second, but it was just like a second thing. I don't know what's going on. But no, so as far as your question, I do struggle with really getting my head around this idea that causality is emergent. And we've had actually an entire episode you guys can see with David where he breaks this down in further detail. But it certainly isn't something that you can just kind of scoff at and look the other way because it's counterintuitive, or because you might not like the way that it sounds, or it might sound confusing. It's something that, like you said, 120 years of science seem to point in this direction, which is that causality seems to be something that is emergent rather than fundamental. And he gives the example of when you're reading a book, you have the experience that the events are kind of unfolding in this narrative, when in reality all the chapters in the book already exist as a totality. So it's in the reading of the book which makes it feel like one page is causing the other. This is the analogy that he gives, but
sure.
But the reality, the concept is that there's something more fundamental to reality, and that these are kind of emergent properties that, and he goes on to talk about how our common sense intuitions are not what we should be using if we want to understand how things really are. That's a lesson the science has taught us. So
I'm going to continue, but there was a point I wanted to make before we started. So this is not actually like tangent to anything that's going on now. I'm just saying this now in case we don't get to it today. But the thing I remember the most about the conversation, and maybe I'm just confusing one, was this conflation between causation and explanation at some point.
You're not conflating. Yes.
Okay. So
that's the entire point. That's the entire problem.
Yeah. And so I have a clip set up for that if we get there. And I'll go ahead and say, if people aren't familiar, go watch Locke and Oppie's debate, and go watch at this point that Oppie has to kind of drill to Locke for a minute about when we're talking about the PSR or causation, like what the PSR is actually couched in terms of explanations rather than causes. And I remember seeing like in the group messages, like them kind of being like, they think there's this difference. And I was just like, yes, there is. I mean, this is a huge point in, from a lot of different philosophical positions, is the distinction between causes and explanations. But anyway, we'll continue.
So when you say it's not fundamental, do you mean that it doesn't exist, or that there are exceptions to the rule?
Good question. Right. So what does that mean? We can go into sort of the nitty gritty, and it depends on what aspects of physics you look at. So maybe we can start with the simple, in an introductory physics course, you study projectile motion. You come up with these definitions of acceleration, velocity, and position, and you can, through the math, describe the position of an object at all times. Okay, so already within a few weeks of studying physics, you start to notice something very strange about these equations, right? So the idea is these equations are capturing reality at some level, and reality seems to be there seems to be a clear distinction between um, the, the passage of time from the past to the future, and so you would expect, you might expect that in the basic laws of physics, starting with the kinematic equations, which emerge from acceleration, velocity, and position, to get nonsense if you decide that instead of having t increase in time on the x-axis, right, you have it go the other way. And so when you go the other way, what you can do is build the kinematic equations again, and what you find is that you'll get the exact same. You'll get the mirror image of what you described. So, for example, we can be specific. You throw an object up, it slows down, it reaches its maximum height, then it comes back down. You might expect that if you reverse time, you get something that doesn't make sense. Instead, what you get is the exact same description, and this is the first kind of strange thing suggesting that the events in the world are not governed by our intuition, which is that time necessarily has to flow from the past to the future. And that's the first thing that I would say. But then we can
but does that, I appreciate that, but does that indicate any kind of like a causality or
no.
because
no, it's just a strange kind of feature, right? Just a strange kind of feature. As I said, you might expect from these laws of nature to find this feature that we observe, that the future is very different from the past, right? And normally we can think of this, and I express this in terms of making movies, right? If you make a movie of you throwing a glass and the glass falling on the ground and breaking, there's a clear asymmetry there. If you play the movie backwards, it looks like this is something impossible. And yet, when you go and look deeply in physics, you realize that there's nothing impossible about that. And this brings in other aspects of physics. But I'm just saying it's a strange kind of feature. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'll grant you that it's strange, and I'll grant you that our intuitions don't always comport to reality. But as far as the first,
so we have a concession that our intuitions aren't going to always comport to reality, and it seems that the causal principle is going to be heavily kind of taxed upon this idea of our.
Well, he says that, then forgets it 2 seconds later, because the entire rest of the video, it's them defending intuitions, and then defending causality. Like,
yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to pause it there, because it seems odd. So and again, my memory's fuzzy on it, but that statement stuck out to me compared to what I remember it kind of evolving into. But
first premise is concerned about causality. I think we need to bring this back to that first premise and question whether what you're saying indicates that there's some kind of a causal.
So, well, by the way, David's already said that there's he's not going from like an implication to some a causal.
So this is an example of somebody, like you said earlier, who's responding without actually hearing what's being said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because he didn't talk about a causality. The Kalam still fails if causality is emergent. You don't need it doesn't need to be a causal. The point is the Kalam is viewing its notion of time in the way that physics is kind of taking apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so, already, and the fact he says that we should bring it back to the first premise, he never left the first premise. He is responding to the flaws of looking at causality in those terms. So what David said went in one ear and out the other. He's responding without actually having understood what David said, even remotely.
Yeah.
And the thing that's, to me, the most pathetic about this is the willingness of people who, just because they share an ideology, to just pick a team and say, these people get praise by their followers when they don't understand what they're talking about. It just, I don't know, it's really bizarre.
process going on. So if it doesn't, and causality, then I wonder why. I wonder how that impacts this first premise. I guess is
what I've said so far is just there's a hint when you start to look at physics that there's something weird about the way time is treated.
So now we have David. The way he just started the conversation, he's trying to be nice and to like.
Right.
You didn't really hear everything I said pertained exactly.
He's trying to be so like diplomatic and like respectful in the way he's approaching this stuff. He has a lot more patience, I think, than I do.
Yeah, than any of us.
We have an expectation, and that expectation doesn't seem to be met. But it doesn't invalidate cause and effect.
Okay.
So this doesn't invalidate cause and effect at all. We have to go deeper into physics and see what happens there.
Can I interject one thing? The argument is basically, is the creation of the existence of the universe, is it something that was proactive or reactive? Did something intend to create it, or did it just come into?
But right now we're in premise one. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So I think it would help. It would be helpful for the discussion for us to like.
So I'll have to agree with Abdul as opposed to Thomas in the idea of that, like Thomas is kind of jumping.
Yeah.
He's kind of just leaping over
Sure.
kind of where he's comfortable. Potentially, I don't know him. I'm sure that might be a false statement, but I agreed. I'd like to kind of systematically go through that. And so I do appreciate Abdul's approach of that. It's frustrating to see, hey, I'm expressing that I care about understanding, but then once it's stated to you 2 times in 2 different ways, you're like, well, let's go back to P1.
I never left P1.
We're still in P1, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, was something you were going to say?
No, I feel bad for Thomas in this conversation because he barely gets a word in.
Yeah.
So, but keep going.
To go premise by premise. So I was just wondering, we can just get your take on this, the 3 of you, whether you agree that everything that begins to exist has a cause. If you don't, whether you'd propose some other kind of.
Oh shit! What did I just do? Somebody go back and tell me what time we were at. Hold on.
And yet, when you go and look deeply in physics, you realize.
All right, we're almost there.
See what happens there.
Oh no, wait.
Which is that.
Could you have it?
Or that there are exceptions to the rule.
Right there.
Right, so
no, so wait. This is my brother. We saw the answer.
So what is that?
Okay, so we saw the answer to this. We'll start there. Sorry, everybody. I fucked up.
The passage of time from the past to the future, and so you would expect, you might expect that in
were we here already?
Basic law.
Yeah. This is the response he gave, and then so just skip ahead a little bit.
Emerge from acceleration.
Like 16 minutes. Around 16 minutes.
Yeah, but
turn my
does
volume up. I can't.
I appreciate that, but does that indicate any kind of like a causality or?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Time is treated. We have an expectation, and that expectation doesn't seem to be met. But it doesn't invalidate cause and effect.
Okay.
So this doesn't invalidate cause and effect at all. We have to go deeper into physics and see what happens there.
Can I interject one thing? The argument is basically, is the creation of the existence of the universe.
Yeah,
is it something that was proactive or reactive? Did something intend to create it, or did it just come into?
But right now we're in premise one. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So I think it would help. It would be helpful for the discussion for us to like to go premise by premise. So I was just wondering, we can just get your take on this, the 3 of you, whether you agree that everything that begins to exist has a cause. If you don't, whether you'd propose some other kind of causal principle that might be more plausible.
I mean, for me, so there's contention upon P1. I mean, all you're asking is just, do you have an alternative causal principle?
Plausible than this one, or whether you're just going to be agnostic about it. I mean,
I'll add my perspectives to this as well, sort of going off of what David said. I have 2 issues with this. One is scientific, the other is philosophical. We don't observe anything coming into existence. We see changes in matter in in time, but we don't see anything come into existence from nothing.
Okay, so you have a contention, the same contention that I have, that kind of, is the typical Craig mereological nihilist kind of, well, that's just absurd. I agree with you. I take that perspective of, like, if I'm in a bird's eye view and I'm looking down at a marching band and they formulate like all these different shapes, and then let's say we get like 1 trillion of them, like, does it become a new like ontological entity at some point? I mean, no, like, clearly it doesn't, right? Like, it's not like it begins to exist. If we said like the letter S that they're spelling out began to exist, my question is like, okay, when exactly did it begin to exist? Like, at what member of the trillion member band does it become this S, right? It seems no different to me to say when you build a table or a chair, right, you're kind of just reformulating matter in that way. I don't really know what it means to say that this thing like began to exist.
These are just ways in which we organize, and how do I say this? These are ways in which we talk about things that help us navigate our existence. But there's something that's a reflection of how our minds are structured, not the way that reality operates. And just watch him completely miss the point that I just made.
This call begin at a certain point?
Sure, but within the
Did it have a cause?
that already exists.
Yeah.
Say it again?
The call began at a certain point in time.
Well, if you're Craig, you're going to make a distinction between like events and particulars and things like that, but that's a separate point.
And I'm wondering if that's sufficient for us to infer that it has a cause for the beginning of its, No,
but I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying is that, we could say, I build a house, right? And you can talk about it as I'm the cause of the house being built. But none of the things that I used to build the house came into existence. They were
That's
there.
not what the premise says. The premise doesn't talk about coming into existence. It talks about beginning to exist. So this
Can you pause it right there?
This current event of.
All right.
But how is he making a distinction there? What does that mean? He's saying the premise doesn't talk about things coming into existence. It talks about things beginning to exist. What is he saying is the difference? If you're talking about causality, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm still kind of taken back on at least his example, like, right, like, I mean, that is my hang up, like, because like I'm not sure exactly what moment, if we're going with the event, or what particular necessarily causes it, right? It seems that like you have an issue with the parts and the wholes, for me to distinguish like when something actually becomes that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can't remember who makes this point, but it's kind of like when you have, if you're going to make a baby, right, you have non-baby material like a sperm and an egg, right, that develops and at some point creates some baby. But there's this weird process to me to like, when does that begin to exist? Which was the cause? When do you pinpoint that? And it seems to me like that, like you had said, it seems to be reflective of the way that our
it's how we talk about things.
Yeah, it seems to be more. Yeah, it seems just to be more indicative of like internal structure of thought than it does to be actual external, stimuli in the first place. But
this discussion we're having began to exist, and I would say therefore it has a cause. Would you agree with that inference, or am I?
So you're making a distinction between beginning to exist and coming into existence. You're saying that it's.
I mean, that's what the premise says. I mean, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Not everything that comes into existence has a cause. Although
he doesn't answer my question.
Sorry, I was pulling something up. Let me hear you again.
The discussion we're having began to exist, and I would say therefore it has a cause. Would you agree with that inference, or am I?
So you're making a distinction between beginning to exist and coming into existence. You're saying that it's.
I mean, that's what the premise says. I mean, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Not everything that comes into existence has a cause. Although I would think that if something did come into existence,
what Abdul isn't saying necessarily is that beginning to exist means that the physical material has to begin to exist from nothing. He's saying whether you're talking.
Yes. So this is kind of the thing, the point that I get hung up on, right? Is that now we need a we need like a little more modest principle, right? We need a like whatever materially begins to exist has some material cause for its existence, or you could go material and efficient. And so it's weird to me because if we use that, right? Like if I grant that first premise, I just say, okay, yeah, well, this Game Boy had, at some point, like we could say it began to exist or something. Well, the only thing that logically follows that gets me there is that the universe also had some material and efficient cause, right? I mean, but it doesn't seem that the theist is going to want to commit to that logical inference as well.
What time are we at in the video, right now? What time are we at?
1804.
Okay, it took 18 minutes. And really, the conversation started at 10.
So 8 minutes, yes.
Okay, it took 8 minutes from then to try to sneakily change the dynamic of the Kalam from talking about causes to now, it's not about the material, but it's something else. Like they're trying to make it seem like the Kalam is not dealing with the material. When you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, it was always looking at things causing the material as an analogy for then everything else.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like X material. They're just saying there's some material, right? There's going to be some. I guess essentially it seems like they're saying they're going to accept that change from right? They're going to accept like the first law of thermodynamics. They're going to accept that these are just merely changing form in some way. But my problem with that is I don't know how you make that some metaphysical thesis when it only specifically deals with what we know from material. And then you have to get to a new brand of causation and strip away what it means at that point, which is, from nothing. You kind of get rid of this like relationship between affecting something and that's an effect on something, because it's just weird to say like this principle applies from like a material standpoint, but then once we go to like nothing at all, somehow that principle still applies metaphysically. That part I don't get.
And that's the irony, is that they claimed that they got us to acknowledge and admit the first premise, when in reality it's been the other way around. They changed the meaning of the first premise to be something else, then pretended like they cornered us. I mean, it's just...
Whether you're talking about forms, whether you're talking about events, whether you're talking about this call, it began to exist. Now, whether it began to exist because it was a prior state, that's fine. People can argue that. But the fact is that an event began to exist, and whether that beginning to the existence of that thing had a cause for it.
Right. So again, I think that is holding to a view of causality that is actually problematic. And like David was saying, sort of going off of what he described, is that the feeling of causality is more of like a narrative that we tell ourselves. It's not actually fundamental to reality itself. It's something that it's a sort of more of a narrative that emerges from a certain type of experience. And when we look closer and deeper into what is actually going on, we run into problems. It's more like a common sense approach that where our intuitions actually fall short of what seems to actually be going on.
But I guess cease to know. Sorry, I mean, I should call you cease to know, right? That's what you go by, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So okay. So I guess the issue is, I mean, that the reason I was asking David whether these counterintuitive things that we observe in the world, whether they indicate some kind of causality, whether they negate causality, or whether it's just weird stuff that's happening, If you're saying there's just a bunch of weird stuff happening, I don't think that interacts with the first premise at all. I don't.
So, do I have you guys wrong in terms of? So it seems like right, we're talking two different things. We're talking like now a change of the causal principle to it being in relation to like my problem is that it seems like we're using the intuition of all what we have ex materia, but then trying to also say that that principle somehow we're not just talking about that, then we're also talking about just whatever it is that begins at what point. But I don't know outside of what example you have to appeal only for materia, right? So it seems like the only modest premise you can make is one that includes like, whatever begins to exist or whatever material, however you would want to phrase it, I guess, has a material and efficient cause or a material cause or whatever, if you want to go Aristotelian or wherever you want to go with it. But it seems to me that like, cool. But then, you're not, like I said, you're not going to accept that because the second you do, it's like, okay, well then the universe had a material and efficient cause. And then this is the game that Craig plays where he just cherry picks one of the two to say that it has an efficient cause.
Well, the point that they miss is that David is laying down the groundwork to show why we should be skeptical of the first premise. He's trying to be diplomatic. He's not outright coming out and saying it's entirely like, let's just throw it out the window immediately. He's explaining and kind of taking a longer approach to show why that is. Why the first premise is inadequate in the context of what we understand in the science. So the fact that he's saying, well, if it's just some weird stuff is going on, it's not enough to not accept the premise, but it is enough to doubt it. Like he just kind of, because it's inconvenient to his position, he's trying to brush off what David said as though it's not a problem. But he's not actually addressing what David said, the conclusions that can be derived from the observations in physics. He's trying to brush it off like it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it negates causality, as David quite rightly, I think, from my point of view, said. So if you're saying it's an incoherent principle of causality to hold to, I think I would want you to give me a reason for that and maybe propose an alternative, or maybe you can make the claim that we can't hold to a principle of causality at all. We need to be like skeptics.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I want to know from you, and also back to David, because the answer wasn't really clear to me. Do you think that the first premise is false, or you're just agnostic on it, that you don't think we can know that it's true based on the current physics and the current science?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you because you mentioned things, in my view, what I was hearing was things to maybe cast doubt on it. But I wasn't sure whether or not you thought it was outright false, or you're just saying there's this weird stuff going on right now and we don't really know what's going on. Therefore, we can't say that it's true.
No. I would say it's false. But the problem with one is that there are two things that are being mixed. So beginning and cause and effect. Maybe we should separate the two things out. Okay. So I would say it's up.
So we just confirm Abdul, like when he said, I think David's affirming what I'm saying, and then
I mean, that's a shocking thing, right? And keep in mind that after this conversation, they went on social media saying that they got a physicist and a philosopher to agree with the first premise. What did David just say? That the first premise is false. So, I mean, why have to lie to the people who follow you? Muslims reject science anyway, for the most part. When it doesn't coincide with their interpretation of the Quran.
Well, hold on. Let's see if it's perfectly preserved, like the Quran is. Let's go back and listen to see
stuff going on right now, and we don't really know what's going on. Therefore, we can't say that it's true.
No. I would say it's false.
Oh, so hey, and by the way, since it's perfectly preserved as a message, then it must be true, right? Just like the Quran's argument that it's perfectly preserved, and because I can keep going back over and over this, and it'll be perfectly preserved, and that must make it true, right? It just logically follows from those inference rules. So yeah,
really is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And so I'm sorry for the beginning of the first part. I'm kind of trying to understand the shift that's going on between you guys on that.
The shift is that the reality is that they're out of their element, and for the next 2 hours, they try to.
So I'm trying to understand the shift that like Abdul is making that he's not getting from David, right? It seems like you're just talking past each other at that point.
It's not even past each other. It's them are just they're just ignoring what's being said. Like David says, the first premise is false, and Abdul is like, well, is it really false, or is it that we just like it's just
continue on.
The problem with one is that there are two things that are being mixed. So beginning and cause and effect. Maybe we should separate the two things out. Okay, so I would say separate the two things out because from the perspective of physics, they're two sort of different things. So what I was saying is, I was trying to build a sense of the last 120 years and the kinds of things. Well, actually, this goes back to Newton, actually. So people already started to notice these things over 120 years ago. But there are strange features that when you go deeper with physical theories like relativity, special relativity in 1905, and general relativity, which completely is beyond our intuition, and quantum physics, then you, in a sense, you kind of destroy cause and effect at the fundamental level. But that doesn't mean that cause and effect is not a useful kind of thing. In fact, most of physics is about cause and effect, but it's an emergent relationship.
But David, you spoke about quantum physics.
Can you pause it?
Obviously, you know much more about this than I.
There, he really just summarizes the position that we have. And like I said, it's a position that then they go and lie about. Like, they've just heard, and this is on record, that physics undermines these common sense notions of causality. Therefore, the first premise doesn't apply, doesn't work the way they want it to. They heard it, like you guys all just saw that, and they go on social media lying about it. Like,
yeah,
it's gross to me. Like, this is why I don't respect these people, because that how do you do that and not be embarrassed?
Shout out to Dad. Well, I'm gonna give shout out to a couple people here. Take a break. Shout out to Best Name Ever, aka K-Dog, Jim Barrows. You may know him from the Atheist Experience. CJ, an awesome, fine viewer that's always in here all the time, giving very good insight. Allison, I don't know if I did I say Allison? If I didn't, Allison, welcome. I think it's the first time I've seen you in here, or it's just been that long. Titan, what is going on? And yeah,
thanks
Twitter. Yeah, and thanks to the donations and Mama Bear. And yeah, so this brings me back to Captain Dadpool to say that he was on Apologia today, and so you should go check that out because I believe it was him and Biddy that were on there. And I say I believe, I know, I don't know why I said I believe, but they were on there, and so you should go check that out. But anyway, and Kyle. But anyway, all right. See you, Kyle. Have a good one. But anyway, sorry to interrupt all that. I just want to give a shout out to everybody.
And I do, but from the very little I know, it doesn't seem like that quantum fluctuations indicate some kind of like acausal.
Oh my God! Stop with the acausal.
Well, so I already cringe like when someone wants to like feel competent to like let's go back real quick, right? He felt so competent in his abilities to communicate quantum physics, which I'll quote Sean Carroll. Quantum physics. Well, I'll paraphrase Sean Carroll. Quantum physicists are often are a lot like people with iPhones. They can do some really cool things with them, but when pressed, they have no idea what's going on inside of them. Right. And so now let's talk to Abdul, who is a renowned quantum physicist out of the bedroom of wherever he's at. And let's see.
In quantum physics, then you, in a sense, you
said quantum physics. He perks up over here. He's like, "Ooh, okay."
But that doesn't mean that cause and effect is not a useful kind of thing. In fact, most of physics is about cause and effect.
But your a posteriori, true or knowledge of quantum physics and what it actually states. The fact that, by the way, David here teaches a quantum physics course, okay, at the school that I'm potentially transferring to and where my brother graduated from.
Again, that doesn't mean that everything he says is correct, but at least he can.
No, I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not saying.
I know, but that's how they're going to take it. Like,
yeah. I'm not saying that in any way. But what I'm saying is that it's funny to me,
right? Same.
That we got some a posteriori empirical evidence based insight, and then we have Abdul. Look, he's already making the face. Yeah. That's really against my a priori intuitions that I can derive synthetic truths from, just purely a priori perspectives, or just an inductive assessment of what I think causality is and extrapolate that to some metaphysical truth. So I'm going to speak up about quantum physics now. That seems to me like a very bad chess move to make. That's just
two things real quick. One, Allison asks if you can turn up the volume on the video.
Oh yeah, I probably have it low. Sorry.
And two, this is the irony of why it's amusing to me when theists call atheists arrogant, because you here you have an expert in the field trying to explain to 4 laymen about physics, and yet they're trying to lecture us about what the physics are saying. Based on what? I don't come to you or I don't come to them and pretend like I can read Arabic or speak Arabic. Like that is their domain.
Yeah.
On what ground? Like, how do you have that level of arrogance, like, and that little self-reflection, to think that you can speak like an expert on these things, and by the way, not actually provide a real reply to anything that David said? They're just, this doesn't seem to really match my intuitions. I mean, keep playing.
But it's an emergent relationship.
I mean, look, I'm sorry, I'm psychoanalyzing here, but the leaning back and forward is like, this really goes again. You're like mathematics, the interpretations of quantum physics just really rub my intuitions wrong about. Like, I don't think this actually goes against my intuitions.
But David, you spoke about quantum physics, and obviously you know much more about this than I do. But
glad for the admission.
Yeah,
so probably should stop there.
From the very little I know, it doesn't seem like
and a demonstration of such in a few seconds.
But that quantum fluctuations indicate some kind of like a causal event. It just indicates some kind of improbabilistic event. It's just,
hold on, and we have Otangelo, the expert at writing blogs full of horseshit. Yeah, good.
But I'm the first one to say, when do you see me talk in detail about quantum physics? Like everything I repeated are things that the experts have been saying, but I've never claimed to be an expert. Or okay, yes, Abdul, he gets credit for saying that he doesn't know much about it, but then goes on to talk like he does. At the most, I've pointed to things that have been explained to me on the show by actual experts, and then waited for a response by the theist. And again, Angela, if you're still asking this question, you still haven't understood what's being said to you. And again, your expertise is to link people to your own blogs where you quote mine people, half of which, actually more than half of which,
don't
disagree with you.
Yeah, I don't even agree with this position.
So, I can't even be bothered. Keep playing.
See, just as there's a reason he's been banned from AXP and Talk Heathen. Well, so he came. I think I talked to him on Talk Heathen once, but he got banned on the line as well for being really, really naive about the Shroud of Turin. But yeah, anyway, go check that clip out. That was me and Matt.
That was hilarious.
So if you, so I didn't really give a. I don't know if I did, but if you missed it because we didn't do shows for a while, I did AXP with Matt Dillhunty, and I did The Line. So if you like that type of stuff, go watch that and support.
I do gotta show this comment because it's hilarious to me. Otender says, "I am not gullible like you are." The hilarious irony of that statement and the pure psychological projection that is that fills that statement is just, I love it. I love it.
I don't know why I love that so much, but I do.
I'm jealous.
Twitter has like the greatest like little quips ever. But anyway.
And I will say,
and they're never like, if it's something like that, it's never like too offensive. It's always like tame, nice. So I just wanted to give him credit.
But for the record, I will say, Otangelo, I will never ban you from the show because your comments amuse me.
I might ban him one day.
Well, I personally, when unless people are saying like racist or homophobic stuff,
sure.
Like I refuse to ban people unless they're like being threatening. But Otangelo's silly statements that make me giggle. So
yeah.
Sorry, it's a probabilistic.
Especially his statements about ATP. I'm gonna have to present that to my biology teacher this semester and see what she thinks.
A vague occurrence that doesn't necessarily negate causality, and I think you were kind of making an implicit reference to a B theory of time there. I don't know if that's acausal either. Maybe you want to.
Oh, was that you? David sounded like you saying stop. That was weird. There's the relation coming into play.
Look at special relativity. So maybe put quantum mechanics aside for a second. We can get to quantum mechanics and general relativity together, right? And we can see what kinds of things have emerged in the last few years, and they completely scramble cause and effect. And they scramble it to the point where I don't know what physics is about anymore. And I'm trying to have conversations with philosophers because I don't know what my subject matter is anymore. Because the way we think and the way we construct theories, the way we simplify our theories is all in terms of cause and effect. So I don't even know how to, and I think this is one of the messages. We don't really understand things at a fundamental level. We're just naturally prone to simplify things and to break things up into things happening in space at given moments in time. And this is basically counter to the what you get when you look at general relativity and especially when you combine it with quantum physics.
So yeah, we have a huge issue here, right? So we have this issue of every bit of the intuitions you have when we actually go for some empirical or some a posteriori basis, it is we would get the fucking wrong answer if we took your intuitions and just tried to post hoc rationalize all the way down, right? And none of that I feel like has been heard at least at all. So
no, and again, how do you go from what David just said to yes, we agree with the first premise?
Well, you just go, well,
fucking
yeah, and then also you just go, how do you even just say, well, I still agree with it? The thing is, you just say, well, I just have intuitions and I feel like they get me to metaphysical certainty. No. It has methodological utility, but lacks ontological justification or epistemic justification. Like we do these things because they have such, we talk in that way because it just has a good utility in terms of, how we speak and communicate. And I think, you don't have to read. You don't even have to read Wittgenstein to kind of get into doubting language in a lot of ways. In that aspect, you can. Just,
but it does help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but you can just kind of retrospect on yourself with that, or by yourself on that. But
I really appreciate that. But I think what I'm trying to say is that so when you're doing quantum physics, right, and you observe these counterintuitive occurrences that are more probabilistic in nature and kind of like go against everything you've been like the common sense understanding of causality. It's not like you.
And I'm sorry to cut him off, but this is where I heard this from an apologetic who also has no degree in quantum physics, use this against this. And so I'm going to parrot it. That's my intuition. And I think it's metaphysically true because I have this very strong intuition about that. That's where Abdullah's getting it from.
Negate causality. I think you're still assuming that there's some kind of causal explanation for what's going on. You're just really confused in the sense that you don't know what is causing it to be the way it is. A probabilistic causality is not a causality. That's.
So again, David said his position, and he is trying to put words into his mouth. He said that physics scrambles our assumptions about causality. And therefore, and he said the first premise is false. And now, what's his name, Abdul, is trying to pretend like David is talking about probabilistic causality or acausality or this or that. Like, You were just told what the position was, and now you're strawmanning the position because you don't have a response. It's fucking embarrassing.
Well, part one has been extremely. I'll find the word for it.
That's as far as I know.
Okay, so
wait, pause for a second.
Sorry.
How do we give her a brain?
She says, "I promise it won't." Yeah, I can do that. Give me a second. I'm not on my. I have to open up a new tab so I don't mess with this one. And I'll start the video.
Go ahead.
That's I
was just gonna maybe we can bring in a practical example. If we look at special relativity just by itself, right? The theory says things like it's a matter of principle that if I walk past you if I walk past you, I'm not going very quickly. It's an issue of principle that I now have, in some sense, a view, a way of dividing space and time differently from the way you divide space and time up, just because I'm moving with respect to you. And now what you would consider as a matter of principle, some distant event that's going to happen in 1 billion years from now on in some distant universe, let's say, this is what the theory says. From my perspective, it's happening right now. So now you try to square this idea of cause and effect with this consequence of the theory, right?
David, if you don't mind, I think the issue is, right now, what you're saying is more relevant to premise 2. No, right now, what you're advocating for is some kind of a B theory of time. I don't think it's contra-causal in the sense that if we do have some kind of a B theory of time, there's no causality. What you're saying is that our understanding of time would just not be the common sense understanding of time. And I think there's something else. I'm sure you would definitely know much more than me about this, but relativity doesn't necessarily entail a B theory of time. I mean, there are models of there are a theoretic.
This is the most desperate part to me. Is holding, especially trying to do that and hold on to an A theory of time.
But again, he keeps misrepresenting what David is saying. He's like, he can't accept it, so he has to change what's being said to be something else that he has half of an idea of how to respond to. David gave you particular examples as to why your notion of causality does not work. So he didn't say acausality, he didn't say probabilistic. He said that our notions of causality are problematic and our intuitions about causality are problematic. And the first premise is false. Everything he said was in relation to the first premise. This is a pathetic attempt to try to save face and evade what's being said by painting it as something else. And it's amazing to me that, and this is why religion is so toxic, that people watching this, Muslims watching this, actually think that these people gave a good show. It
would not have mattered what was said from, and I think atheists are guilty of this in a lot of respects too. So I'm not going to paint like one, group of people, but a lot of people, they go in and they root for their team, right? It's like their sports team or something, and
But yes, of course there are atheists that can be dogmatic in the way, but I think I definitely see that kind of behavior far more in religious circles.
I agree. The reason I mention it is that I understand that mentality because I had similar mentality, and it took until I got into philosophy to break down things to me to go, wow, I'm truly agnostic. I don't know what I believe in. And then on the other side of that, I went from like lack theist to like gods don't exist. Right. But it took a process of me going of having to seriously doubt that. And so the reason I bring that up is it seems that classic case of like Muslim first, philosopher second, right? I mean, you're just going to work backwards from that perspective. Wow, look at all the love I'm getting. I made best name ever a host, and it's already like shelling out the links for that. That's appreciated.
Real quick, I'm just gonna something that Angelo said. we don't need to prove that there's only the physical world to be justified in not believing in God. Like, not proving the physical world doesn't give credence to your beliefs. So it's completely irrelevant.
I'm gonna answer this as well. What do you think about Cleos? He talks to Christians, he behaves insensibly, contradictions. So I don't typically like to talk about the person when they're not there. So, but I did want to add to James's comment here, because he makes a point that, and since we're on this group, that I find them using a lot that doesn't make any sense, which is, I can find contradictions in your worldview, and therefore it's like the worldview is false. It seems like that's the perspective that they take, and it's like, well, no, because you could have a position in naturalism in which there's a direct contradiction, right? Like, you could be a naturalist and maybe just be like a proponent of like dialetheism or like paraconsistent logic. Well, I guess then you're dealing with contradictions at that point. A bad example. So you could just say, like, you could be a naturalist and have one position that you don't realize commits you to some contradiction. Make it cleaner. That wouldn't mean naturalism is false. It would just mean like whatever theory you have pertaining to that could be, right? And so that's not the indication. But the issue I have, sorry, what was that?
But to be fair, I don't think that's what they're claiming. They're saying that
from my conversations, it seems to be heavily inferred that that's the case, because it seems to be this idea of like, your TV's broken, therefore my TV works type of a thing. And it's like, no, you have to demonstrate that your TV turns on. The fact that mine doesn't has like no indication. And I could be wrong, but that's the vibe I've gotten a lot from my conversations in that sense. Thank you. T-Jump says everything's imaginary until proven otherwise. I follow this. Find it. Yeah, I think, that's a pretty standard good epistemology from the sense of like at least getting you to a mechanism. I would agree.
Yeah, I agree with the perspective. Like, you have to provide a way to distinguish between what's imaginary and what's actual, or at least provide the tools why we should, even if we can be certain why something is more likely to be actual. And also another comment: if there is no God and no eternal life, then it makes no difference if you live like a saint or like a jerk. One day we will all be dead, and what we did will soon be forgotten. That is at the core of why I find religion so repulsive. Like, the fact that I'm going to die someday doesn't mean that it's irrelevant how I treat people while I'm alive, because I care about my well-being. I care about the well-being of other people, independent of whether or not some God is going to give me eternal bliss.
Sure.
The fact that I'll die and be forgotten is irrelevant to whether or not I can have meaning while I'm alive. That all of that is a projection of your psychology, that you need to believe that there's some cosmic meaning to get up every day. I don't share that weakness. So
I don't know that I could add anything to that. It's pretty much summed up perfectly. Speaking of Don's comment, we'll do I don't think we'll do a full review, but I forgot that I did. So I did a debate with T-Jump, and I want to start that list the next episode if we have one tomorrow. I'm going to go over some issues I had with the conversation, as well with things that I wish I wouldn't have pussyfooted around, because there was a lot of issues I had with the responses that T-Jump had given me during that debate that I didn't feel like were satisfactory in any way. But
and that will be interesting, because I think I'm more on T-Jump's side.
On his side, yeah, exactly. So maybe we will go through the full video or something if this type of style works. It seems that we're making good progress, though, for the first 2-hour video that we've done.
Crazy.
So maybe it'll be a 4-parter.
Let's try to get models of time.
Let's try to get to 30 minutes
that take relativity into account. So I don't know I think this is more related to the second premise, because I don't think anything you're saying right now, and I don't think you're trying to say that causality doesn't exist, or that things that begin to exist don't have a cause. What you're saying is that the mechanisms of the way things interact in the world is kind of spooky and weird. I mean, we'll grant you that.
No, so I don't think I'm saying that. Yes, I agree that I'm describing the B theory
It's like, hey, here's the things you're saying. I'm not saying that.
of time, but I think the B theory of time, if you take it seriously, is saying that cause and effect are not fundamental. And the reason for that is that all of these events in space and time have to be there in space and time in the same way. That's the conclusion that comes from the example that I was giving. And so it's not that future, that event that's in your distant future that you think can be caused by something, you think of it as something that results from some cause, is occurring from my perspective right now. So this is very tricky, but again, the best analogy that I have for this is that what special relativity is doing, and I agree with you that some people say that special relativity is maybe not strictly speaking correct, and they're looking for what's called a violation of Lorentz invariance. These theories, as far as I understand, there hasn't been very good experimental evidence for this. But if you take the ideas as they are, what they're saying is that here's an analogy that I always use the idea of a book.
I want to point out, by the way, that our boy CJ is in the comment section right here on this video.
Oh, that's good.
So shout
what
out.
does it say there?
Causality is a temporal notion. And hey, we have, not only is this a part 2 of going over this, we got Otangelo up in the conversation, so he was there too with CJ. So hold on, what's going on in the conversation now? Is it CJ and him? Nah, CJ left. Damn, they could hash this out and go look at the comments, but.
David is annihilating these people, and
all the pages
they don't even know.
Yeah, it's weird for me to hear I give Abdul some respect for trying to engage,
but he's not. The thing, he's not.
He's trying to in some way. These two are like stunned, like they don't know what to do.
I mean, if engaging is trying to misinterpret or misrepresent what's being said, then okay. But I don't think he's engaging. I think he's trying to straw man because he has nothing to actually respond to. I don't give any respect to any of these people.
Sure. Yeah,
I'll give respect when they stop being cowards and actually come on the show and actually debate me as opposed to talking shit online. Then I will publicly give my respect.
Yeah, and I posted a clip in there. I'll play that clip. I'll make sure to play that clip on every part we do, even when it's not related, right? Like tonight we'll end the video and I'll play that Graham Oppie clip. And tomorrow or whatever day we do the next part, I'll play that Graham Oppie clip because that drove me nuts that they thought there was like a slam dunk on the PSR. And I was like, and like their evidence was like Googling the word like explanation or cause and then finding the word and the definition and going, I
mean, it's
like that's not philosophy. That's
I get secondhand embarrassment when I read and hear these things. Like, just I don't know.
Ugh. Hey, off note, one thing I want to say. So if no one noticed, I got a new chair behind me, and I have struggled so much in the last few streams in terms of my back. I no longer have that issue. So if you have really bad back problems, I suggest a big comfy chair. Just want to throw that out there.
All of the events in space and time are there, right? Different pages represent different times, but you would never say that page 7 causes the events of page 10.
So this is the kind of the thing you were steel manning from him.
Cause the events of page 11.
Yeah.
Right? They exist there in the book as a story, right? That's sort of
Dave. Yeah. So I was going to say, just see, David. I think what you're basically saying is that okay, you've got a B theory of time. B theory of time says all events, past, present, and future, all exist. It's not that the past causes the present and the present causes the future. But the question really is that when we talk about causality, are we saying causality is just simply a principle that we arrive at through empiricism? So are we observing causality, and that's the conclusion that we come to, which is causality? Or are we saying that causality is more fundamental? It's a metaphysical principle that we assume that events that operate within the universe.
Yes, you are making a synth like so. It seems weird for you to have this metaphysical principle. It seems like if you take Kant's route, right? Like maybe you just disagree, but it has to be of like some metaphysical truth has to be of what you would call some synthetic a priori truth, and by that, Kant means like something that's ampliative. Like for example, we could have an analytic a priori truth, such as like there's 3 sides on a plane enclosed as a triangle, and then you could add a synthetic truth or claim a synthetic truth to say like if you add up all the angles, it equals 180 degrees. It's not something that's like contained in the definition, or at least some people would argue. And so for me, it's weird when people go to the causal principle as this metaphysical thesis, because it just seems to me a way that we categorize something that has to deal with within like physical laws, right? You strip those away, or you strip temporal access away, or you strip any of these types of things away, it's no longer what's like in a way fundamentally necessary for causation to emerge out of in the first place, right? And I don't like using the word fundamental, but almost antecedent, I guess I would say, right?
Metaphysical is the word that theists use incorrectly when they don't have a way to defend their views. Like, yeah, metaphysics is a thing in philosophy, but it's often misused by theists who don't actually have defense for their claims. And it's funny that this guy, I can't read his name, but he asks if causality is fundamental when David said about 5 times already that it isn't.
Yeah. It really has been about like 5 or 6 times.
I mean, it's just...
Not including the times you've said it.
Have an explanation as to why they operate the way they do. Yeah, so there's 2 separate things here. So that's why, you could be a B theorist of time. You could believe that all past, present, and future events exist, but at the same time, you can also believe that every event within the universe has a fundamental explanation. It's not completely random.
So I'm not saying that there's no explanation. The explanation is the laws of physics. Well, the laws of physics plus initial conditions. So the laws
plus
of physics.
The issue of plus the issue of conditions. Did you say
plus initial conditions? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Initial conditions. You said, yeah.
Yeah. So the laws of physics put things in a relationship to one another, in the same sense that the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are in a relationship to each other. But you wouldn't say that these numbers cause each other, right? That same idea. Yeah. What I'm saying is that's what emerges.
I just want to point out that Thomas is just like soaking all this. He's soaking all of this in. Like it looks like he forgot he's part of this. And again, Thomas, nothing against you. I'm sure you're a great guy, and so don't take this the wrong way. But you seem like zoned in, like. Hell yeah, I'm getting a lesson right now, and I like this. So I just want to shout out.
I felt bad for him because he didn't really get a chance to say much. But again, so just listening to this, look at this bait and switch they're doing. They're moving from causes to explanations.
Yeah.
Then pretending like it's still a cause.
Wait, so let's bring this down then, because that prompts us to exactly where I wanted to be for something, and we'll pop that back on up. So let's put up, we switched from cause to explanation. I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad Cease echoed that statement, because I have something pulled up, and I have a few, and I'll pull up more of them. I only have this one right now, but I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting tidbit that
everything else, setting aside what's happening at t equals 0, is explained causally. So there's nothing that happens subsequently that doesn't have a cause. So there's nothing that occurs subsequently that doesn't have a cause. There's nothing that exists subsequently that doesn't have a cause. The universe begins at t equals 0. T equals 0 is the origin point. It's the beginning of natural reality. So
now, granted, Graham has different positions on this than I think you or your brother have, including myself. But point being,
there's what exists and what occurs at t equals 0 does not have a cause, but it has an explanation. And the more fundamental principle, the principle of sufficient reason, is couched in terms of explanation, in terms of causes.
So I just wanted to throw that out there and have one of the most renowned philosophers kind of make a distinction there, right?
Again, by the way,
because it bothered me. That whole thing really bothered me that they gave as much shit as they did about that when they would not dare to do that to Dr. Graham Oppie if he had said that to them.
Oh, they probably would, because again, the arrogance is severe.
Maybe.
But I just want to say, I just want to say one thing. Let's say, even if we were to grant them that everything had a cause, that does not lead the hypothesis of God being the cause as making any kind of sense. So even if you know, I took causality as being fundamental, they would still have all their work ahead of them to show that cause is an incorporeal mind with intention, design, and all of that. So the Kalam doesn't get them any closer to actually eventually supporting the idea they really want to argue for, is that the best explanation for reality is God. And then even more difficult to do is that their religion is the right religion.
Yeah. I'm curious because I talked to one of my Muslim friends, and he told me he doesn't like to get into like the conclusion into the gap problem, or when he was a Muslim. I'm sorry, he's an ex-Muslim now. And he said because there's actually something like specifically kind of condemned with arguing for Allah in the same way that in that similar way that there is for depicting like Muhammad. But I don't know. He told me this a while back, so I can't really remember specifically. And so I was curious on like whether that has a connection on why the focus never wants to actually go on to it being specifically Allah as opposed to a necessary being. But then I think the Thought Adventure podcast, or whatever their name is, made it a video. I think one that we're gonna do that you presented to me that we're gonna go over as well, where I think they do try to get specifically to Allah. So maybe that's not the case. But if anyone Muslim, ex-Muslim knows that, I was curious because it seems that like Christians are more willing to get to the gap problem to Christianity more so than Muslims do. But I could be wrong. Anyway, I think that's a good place to stop. We're getting into the causation and explanation part. Sure. So I think that's a good place to pick up from.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add? I know I have about 6-minute clip I want to play here at the end of the show. It's kind of unrelated and lighthearted, but I saw it and I could not stop laughing. And it deals with Kent Hovind. And so I thought that maybe other people would want to see this. And I really wanted to see your reaction. Maybe you don't find it as funny as I do. But anyway, yeah, maybe final thoughts on the conversation and then moving things going forward and things like that.
Yeah, and a couple of things. Well, the first is I'm glad to be back. And
yeah,
we're definitely going to be putting up more consistent content soon. The second thing is thank you, everyone. That supports us, and, joins us for these conversations. If you want to support us even more, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Axioms on Trial, or like and subscribe if you haven't already. And the last thing I'll say is this in relation to this conversation. And this was obviously just part one, and we'll break it down into more parts as well, if people are interested in seeing follow-ups. Again, for any theist who wants to go and attack and talk shit online and all that kind of thing, you know where to find us. Like, our email is always posted. axiomsontrial@gmail.com. We're not afraid to have a conversation or have a debate. If you're going to make these claims that, we got destroyed, or we don't know what we're talking about, and we're clueless about philosophy, even though I've been doing it for 16 years now, come defend that statement. Like, you have we're willing to give you a platform. I'm not hiding, and I'm willing to go on other people's shows as well, but they have to at least, I with those guys in particular, I went on a Muslim show. Now it's their turn to come on here and engage us if they're willing.
And by the way, I went on there too at the end, so it's not even like they could say, "Well, you both weren't on there."
Yeah,
I got in the comments after I did a debate. So while that whole thing's going on, I was doing a debate. I get off and I go directly in the comments. I'm like, "Get me in, give me the StreamYard link, like give me." It's all. I mean, the live thing's there, but
instead, what they do is that they set up a situation where there's like 4 or 5 of them usually against one person. They tend to talk over that person, and then they kind of pat each other in the back, and all their followers boost their ego. Don't be afraid. Come engage outside of your comfort zone. And by the way, don't lie about the rules for those conversations, like you did with Apostle Prophet, where we had to expose you guys and expose the email exchange showing that you guys lied about it. It's gross. Be honest, be intellectually honest as much as you can, as you're being a theist, and have the conversation, or don't talk shit.
Yeah, I would echo that.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, thank you, Don. We appreciate that. I think we got 3. Yes, it is. Don's became a Patreon. It is very easy to do. Like I almost said, like Axiom said. I almost called you Axioms. Like C said. Go to patreon.com/axioms on trial. We do genuinely feel bad harping that, or even saying like go subscribe and like. It's just not really our style to do. But we recognize that if me and him, could take financial burdens off of ourselves, then we'd have more time to do the show. And perhaps the more it grows, we could spend a lot of time on the show. And that's the goal. So anything on that front helps us just kind of try to achieve our goal of being a self-sustained podcast, or however you want to view it. I don't like the word podcast, so I typically hate saying that, but anyway, I don't know. I don't. It's not that I don't. It's just that everything's become a podcast. Like even like, it's like I don't view doing Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience as a podcast because I grew up watching it as like a show, and so I've always used it as a show. So when someone's like, "Hey, you doing your podcast?" I'm like, "Well, I don't even know what I do as a podcast at all because we're on video for Axioms and I'm on video for, I guess it's a video podcast, but it seems to be more of like a discussion show about like clip breakdowns, which isn't like a podcast." Anyway, I'm rambling. Nonsense point.
I'm trying to find the schedule for what we're going to be talking about next. Did you want to do a part 2, or do you want to take a break from this and do the discussion of physicalism that we had talked about?
Stay tuned tomorrow and find out.
Okay.
I think we'll talk about that. I think either or is fine with me. Depends. Okay. I guess just depends on we were trying to get a third party in for that conversation. We might not be able to get, but we could always make a 2-parter for that conversation and have them come in later. So lots we can do. That said, we do appreciate it, guys. I'm going to go ahead and don't leave quite yet. If you've seen this video clip, it's on YouTube. I'm sure maybe you've already seen it. I chose to put this here at the end of the video, in that case, for whatever reasons, there's some issues or the video gets taken down or something, I can clip it at the end of it and it not be an issue. So let me get that brought up and hopefully you guys find it as funny as I did, because I thought it was really funny.
Thanks, guys.
Science.
Oh God, yes.
What is it all about?
He's amazing.
What is that all about? Is it good or is it whack?
Okay, please pause it for a second.
I was gonna say, so have you seen this?
Ali G is one of the funniest characters of all time.
I agree.
His conversation.
My dad introduced him to me like when I was a kid on like HBO.
He's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
He makes me sweat, like have cold sweats at how cringy these things are. But his conversation with Noam Chomsky, I had to stop that like 100 because I felt like I was gonna just pass out.
It was so great. Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing.
That's why I was surprised to find out that this exists.
He's so fucking funny.
But yeah, so this is Ollie G. If you don't know who Ollie G is Borat, and he had all those characters kind of before. I believe he had Bruno as a character on there before it was Bruno as well. But when I watched it, I was a kid, so I don't remember much.
Ollie G is my favorite though of his characters.
But this is great. It's one of the best things I've ever seen.
Bloke from round my hood, Staines, called Rainbow Jeremy, will reject everything to do with science. He just chill at home, he smoke his own homegrown, and check this, he don't have a telly. I ain't shitting you, he don't have a telly.
Yeah, he lives in a house though. That house is a product of technology.
No, he ain't got no technology in it. You can check out his website. He ain't got nothing in it.
He's got
a website.
The
He
house
wears clothes,
itself.
shoes.
What?
He eats food.
As computers made our lives better.
I don't think there's any question about it.
Will computers ever be able to work out what 99999999999999999?
Like they have to know that this is
99999999999 multiplied by 9999999. Yo, I ain't finished. You don't know what I was going to say.
9999999.8899889.
All right, so this part goes on for a minute, and it's not
It doesn't make any difference.
Blink of an eye.
It doesn't make any difference.
30,
Whatever
40,
numbers you name, the
89,
computer will be able to handle it.
100,
Yes.
million.
Yes.
Thousand.
Yes.
Million.
Yes. Whatever
Billion.
numbers you want, it will be able to multiply.
0.99998.
Just stop, please stop.
Yes.
Gonna move it on a little bit. Where did men come from?
Men evolved out of lower species in the way that all the species evolved out of lower species.
This is ridiculous. This is ludicrous. If he wants to believe this happened, he's welcome to believe his grandpa it was Lucy and came down from his tree or something. But that is pure religion. We offer $250,000 for anybody with any real empirical, testable, scientific evidence for evolution.
So you saying we ain't come down from monkeys?
No, monkeys are still having babies. Why don't they have another human today?
Okay.
Dumbass.
Has you ever eaten a banana?
Oh, yeah, I eat all kinds of food, yeah. I eat a banana, that's proof we came from a rock. That's not proof of evolution.
The people engaged in this kind of nonsense always set up the rules that you could never win the money. Now,
but the banana thing got him, innit?
Yeah.
He had to start going, oh, no. He started saying, because you started going red when I said that. Like, you thought, oh, shit.
Yeah, but how to banana?
He went red, didn't it?
No, because I'm surprised at how illogical your question was, or your thinking
Yo,
was.
speak to that, because space ain't listening, yo.
I can't.
Well, yo,
8 steps down.
I just want to make clear, because this is going out on the TV or whatever, that I don't do that stuff. I ain't got nothing against it.
Oh, it's the homo that threw him off. I mean, explain that.
It is a scientific nomenclature that describes who we are as part of a phyla or a stream of, it goes hominid, hominoid, and then we go
whatever.
through.
There's different names for it.
We're all Homo sapiens.
All humans would be considered.
My wife is a Homo sapien.
But that's not homosexual.
We're all
That's where the difference is.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a way of describing who we are.
Well, that's it. I just want to make clear your respect for coming on, and I ain't going to treat you differently now that that has come out. That's it.
No, it has nothing to
come out.
No, come on now, you're confused here. Let's settle the confusion. All of people in the whole world, biologists have in a group called Homo, and the particular human group below that is sapiens. And all that is Greek. It just means the Greek word for man smart.
Yeah, a lot of them is very talented.
It has nothing to do with homosexuals. It has nothing to do with the homos that you meet on the street. It's an entirely different lingo.
That you meet on the street.
So is you one of the homo lot?
I am a Homo sapien. I think all humans are Homo sapiens. You are too. Okay, you are too.
Yo.
The term homo and homo sapien has nothing at all to do with sex.
All right. Let's talk about when technology goes horribly wrong. Is there technologies that you won't use?
I try to avoid foods that have pesticide residues on them.
No disrespect, whatever, but does you use a toilet or does you just drop one in a hole?
Of course, I use the toilet like I assume everybody here does, so I hope.
You'd use it, but would you flush?
Certainly, yeah, I absolutely.
So, would you use a toilet, or does you just drop it in a hole?
Oh, I know. I've been to quite a few countries where they don't have toilets, and I'm very glad to get back to America.
So, would you flush?
Oh, sure. And I think you should have a septic system that's properly designed to handle the waste.
You say that, but there's evidence backstage to the contrary. Was it you?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You know what I was talking about.
No, I have no clue.
The floater.
Oh,
Covering it with paper don't make it all right, That goes for the rest of you, whoever it was. Right? I ain't pointing any fingers, but I don't.
Like they have to know that this is.
Well, I don't. It was not me. If that's what you're saying, I would not. If I understand what you're even talking about, which I don't part of the time here.
You know what I was talking about, because if it was, then shame on you.
You're very confusing.
I ain't pointing fingers, but is you the one backstage that didn't flush?
No, sir.
You know what I was talking about, because
if that's what you're talking about,
they have to start thinking it's a joke at this point.
Just saying, out of respect, we was all talking about respect and whatever. Whoever it was, and I ain't just, I don't care. Let's just.
Well, then go on to something else.
Let's put it to the side. But that ain't right. Shame on you.
I didn't do it. Don't say shame on you.
God. Just want to thank you all for coming on here. This was very interesting. Keep it real. Yo, respect.
It will never get old to me to see Kent Hovind be grilled about leaving a floater backstage. That's just great. Oh my god!
To watch that just gives me a visceral reaction. Like it's so brilliant and it's so fucking funny. But I start to feel sick just with discomfort watching it.
Oh, that's great.
Oh my god.
Well, guys, we love you, and we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll try to find more clips and make Cease so uncomfortable that he leaves the stream, and hopefully, not for good, but maybe we can.
We go next time. We have to play the one with Chomsky, because that one.
We'll do that. We will do that. Chomsky next week. Be there. Peace.